if you may recall, not too long ago, I did an unboxing and kind of a review of the items that come in a mystery grab bag from Swords of Might. Well, I promised to myself and pretty much to the audience that I'm never going to do something like that again. That is until Kult of Athena made the offer. Now, I really trust Kult of Athena as a reseller. I pretty much buy almost exclusively through them as much as I possibly can. And I really trust that they're going to give me exactly what I'm looking to buy. And that when they say something is battle ready, it probably actually is well made enough to be battle ready. And made of all the correct materials and all that. So, when they said, oh, we're going to be doing a mystery grab bag, I thought, well, okay. Let's find out what's in it. So very similar to the Sword of Might grab bag that was $200, I did a $200 grab bag, or as it were, a giant box from Kult of Athena. Let me go get that for you. It's a big box. Now, I don't know what's in this. It's going to be very much a surprise to me. They said that you could actually put in a single word that would give them direction on the things to put in there. I thought long and hard about what I want to put in that single word kind of description. You could do fantasy, you could do pirate. In my case, you could do medieval. I think, if I recall, I actually opted to do none of those and to not give any direction, because I wanted to see what I'd get if I just went in completely blind. So we're going to find out, and it's going to be very similar to the previous video I did, where I'm just going to speak to my first impression of the things that I pull out of the box. And then I'm going to go back and try to figure out what the prices were for all these items and do kind of a quasi-review of what I was getting. So hopefully, with Kult of Athena being a much more trustworthy, in my opinion, reseller, we may find that, well, this mystery grab bag is actually worth it. Let's dig in and find out. So, this is a really big box, and I'll be honest, it's pretty darn heavy too. Let's see. It says it's 30 pounds on the weight estimate on the label here. I believe maybe it's around that. It might be a little bit lighter than 30 pounds, so I don't know that I trust that completely. Alright, let's find out what I got in here. Kult of Athena loves their brown paper. I'm going to move this box down so I can place things on the table and get a nicer view. Let's see what this is. Alright, so here it is. They call it the Blowout Mystery Box. Let's find out what's in the mystery box. Item number 1. It is a sword belt. It's actually not a sword belt, it's just a regular belt. In fact, this is actually extremely advantageous because my wife was talking about needing an exact belt like this, and, well, this might be exactly what she needs. So, decent leather belt. Don't know what the price is on their website. I would imagine it's probably around $20, but we'll find out. So, there you go. A ring medieval belt. Let's see what is... Oh. Well, there was something in a scabbard, and it is this giant sword. Wow, that is a strange sword. Goodness. Alright, I'm going to struggle for a moment for words here. This thing is really massive and really quite heavy. And I don't know if you can tell just how big this handle is, but it's very big. It's not super flexible, has a ridge down the center. I can't tell you what brand it is. I don't know. I've never seen this type of sword before. It comes with a really cheap scabbard, so I think that probably tells you pretty much everything you really need to know about this sword. Yeah, anytime you see a scabbard that's made out of leather that has been kind of sewn into a rough scabbard, this is the type of sword you'd find at a flea market. So, can't say a lot about what it's made out of or what the quality is. I can tell you right now, it's way too heavy to be functional as an arming sword, and the construction of it is kind of poor. Let's move on. Oh dear. So more. Oh wow. Words cannot express. This is a, look at, this is a Damascus steel blade. And it does look like it's acid etched. Again, this is a massive, who has hands big enough to comfortably wrap around a grip that large? And boy, is it uncomfortable. That is a really, really strange looking dagger. And again, coming in a cheap leather. Oh, made in Pakistan. Alright, I'm hoping to be surprised soon. This isn't working out so well. Well, here we go. I can honestly say I never wanted to own one of these, but now I do. It's a cold steel hat. There you go, cold steel knives. Hooray. I'll go and pop that on, and we'll continue on through. They look through everything. Alright, so we have a little Ryuman box. I believe this is a sword care box. No, it's not. This is actually a small, and I know I'm going to ruin this pronunciation, wakizashi. That's actually not too bad from what I can tell. I will actually appreciate this one. And actually this matches another sword I have. It's actually a katana from the Sword Buyer's Guide Custom Katanas. And it actually matches it a good bit. I'm not a real expert on the Japanese swords and knives, so I'll have to spend some time researching what this is in terms of quality level, because I'm not real familiar with Ryuman as a brand, but I can report on that in the second half of this video. Let's continue on. Alright, this makes me happy because I've been looking to buy one of these. It is a Kris. If I'm not mistaken, this is the brand I think it is. I might have been looking for this exact one. I'm not sure because I'm not a real expert on Kris's either. But there you go. And now I don't have to buy one because I just got one. It's interesting. I will note that all of these things so far have all come sharpened. So, quick note on that. Sharpening is $20 roughly per job is kind of the rough estimate that most companies do. And, well, that means that 1, 2, 3, at least 4, that's $80 worth of sharpening in theory. So that's not too bad. Actually, I actually appreciate that I'm not getting a bunch of blunt things. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, hello. This comes in a sword bag, which means it must be something katana-like. Let's find out. Feels like a katana. Looks like a katana. Not sure what the brand is. So one of the things they did mention is that they will put a lot of scratch and dent items in here. This has some surface rust on it, on the blade, as you can see. It also has a form of a maker's mark that I don't recognize. Again, I'm not a big expert, so I'll have to go research and find out what this is. I don't know what the quality of this katana is. The fittings look like they're kind of a fake kind of cast metal, so they're not really anything more than just a real cheapo metal on this. So there you have it. There's the katana. Let's see what's next. Ooh. This feels like, oh wow, well, it's definitely a sword. I don't know what it is. boy, that is a fantasy sword, I can tell you that much. Well, there you go. That is a fantasy sword, all right. Kind of a scimitar. Look, it's a Windlass product. I don't know what Windlass product this is, but it's a Windlass product. So, at least I know, at the very least, fantasy sword or not, I could actually use this. Trying to see how it was made. So, interesting, strange, rough peen on the pommel. I might actually do a review of this one in the future because it is Windlass. And of course, all of these are actually subject to an actual legitimate review in the future. I'm going to put that back into the scabbard. Should have known that it was Windlass because the scabbard is super loose, right? That's kind of the hallmark at this point. Interesting. Okay. Let's keep digging down. All right. So, make some room here. So I can put this on the front. It's a nice, nice pretty box. Well, I can say one thing, I'm running out of room on this table, so I'm getting at least some things that are interesting. It's hard to open. Oh, it's got these latches. So let's see. Ooh. Okay. Well, there goes the, yet again, the reason you have to speak to the scratch and dent aspect. This came right off of the scabbard. That's easily reapplicable, though. I actually really like the design of the scabbard, so I will definitely go to making this a little bit better. Again, I can't speak for the brand. Boy, that's sharp. This looks like maybe it is actually properly pattern welded. It is much lighter, much more subtle. That said, this feels very fakey as a sword. It's extremely heavy. And balance point is way out there. Of course, I don't know a lot about Chinese swords, but there you go. At the very least, I really like the design on a lot of this. Oh dear, that didn't fit back in the scabbard. That's interesting. Doesn't go back in. I will have to figure out that. And it's worth noting that somewhere way over there, the chape of this also went flying off. So I'll have to go find that somewhere. Scratch and dent, you might get something that isn't quite whole. I think that might be it. Double checking. All right, so that is what came in the sword mystery box from Kult of Athena. I will go through, I will search out what these various items are, see if I can find the rough retail price on them, and kind of do a summation and figure out what the overall value of this is. I will say, again, from my perspective, probably the best value I got is actually the Kris, because I've been looking to get one of those to add to my collection. And I do think that a Windlass sword is always probably worth having because it is at least functional. The rest of these, not so much. However, I will do the due diligence of researching everything and figuring out what they are made of, what their value is, and whether or not they are actually truly functional. So, see you in the second half. Alright, so I got everything unboxed. I basically cataloged it, and then I did some research to find out who the manufacturers are, what the value of the items are, and kind of what the problems are that kind of made them fit into this mystery box instead of just being an item that Kult of Athena might just sell. So I'm going to go through it all real quick. I've got a little cheat sheet here that tells me all about the things and what their prices are. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're just going to break down the prices and sum it all up and say what is the overall value potentially of the items on this table in front of me. So I'm going to start really basic here with the kind of the lesser items. Let's talk about the sword, sorry, not sword belt, just the regular ring belt. This is as basic as it gets. These type of things are about $18. I couldn't find this particular design on Kult of Athena, which means it's probably a discontinued item. They didn't bother trying to sell it anymore. So I'm going to give it the price of about $18, which is pretty much standard across most sites that sell a cheap basic leather ring belt. So it's going to set that to the side. Not a lot of value there. The next item I want to speak about is actually this medieval one-handed sword that is ridiculous. So I couldn't find this. I don't know where it came from. Only God knows where this sword came from. But it is so heavy. It is so bulky. The handle is so thick. It's made out of cheap wood. All of this suggests to me that this is about as cheap as you can get. And I don't know. I'm going to throw out the price. I said probably about $40. Now, everything that they sent, they said they were sending battle-ready things. I don't know that I completely trust that this is a steel that is capable of all of that. Even if it was, even if this is a high carbon steel, which is possible it is, here was the thing that I found out about it. And it's really simple. Just twist off the pommel, and you've got this little tiny nub on the handle. That is the tang. Now I couldn't get the rest of the handle off. It's glued on there very well. But you can see there's not much holding all of this together. So even if, absolutely even if, this was a high carbon steel, which part of me doubts, I don't know that this sword would actually hold up under any type of duress. Now that said, maybe I'll give that a try at some point. But I don't see this being very valuable, so I'm calling it $40. Now if someone can identify what this is, I'll be more than happy to update it with the correct price, manufacturer, all this type of stuff in this video. As of right now, I have no clue. So please let me know. It is definitely one of those cheap things that comes with a cheap scabbard. So there you have it. I'm just going to set this one to the side here. Go ahead and move the ring belt down. Whittle this down. Alright, the next item I want to talk about is yet another thing that comes in a cheap scabbard made in Pakistan, according to the sticker. This is, they're calling it a Scottish kilt dagger, because I guess they couldn't figure out what the real name of a Scottish kilt dagger is. This comes from a company called Red Deer. So they say it's a Damascus blade. My opinion, looking at the blade, I say that it's actually probably an acid etched or printed Damascus. It does not look like real Damascus. There's something we can compare to later that is actually a folded steel, and it was a little bit more obvious that it is actually a folded steel. This one, I don't really believe it. Part of what actually tells me that when I look at it really closely is that when they have put the edge on this, when they have sharpened this blade, well, it's actually removed a lot of the pattern welding, and there isn't really anything obvious that would say this is anything other than acid etched on. So I'm less inclined to say this is actually anything more than a cheap stainless steel dagger-ish item. The price of this item, believe it or not, is $56. $56. Don't know I'd spend $56 for this. But there you have it. That is the estimated retail price. I could find nothing on this that actually was bad in terms of like broken or damaged or anything like that. So this was just an item I'm assuming is discontinued. Alright, the next item we will go over, we'll actually go over one of my favorites. And that is this one, the Kris. Now, like I said, I've been looking to get a Kris, and I had actually been looking at this exact brand. This is a Moro Kris, the Moro brand, and you can get those at traditionalfilipinoweapons.com. You can also get them at Kult of Athena. These are pretty much kind of the standard for getting a really quick, cheap-ish, in terms of more inexpensive, I should say, Kris. And they were what I was looking at, and certainly I'm happy that I got one. This is really quite amazing. Got exactly what I kind of wanted. What's really interesting about this is the sword itself. I see no defects, no problems. It could probably use a little bit of cleaning, get all the grease off, but for the most part, it looks great. The only real problem that this sword has is actually in the little scabbard here. You can see that chunks of the wood are coming apart. So it's really cosmetic on the scabbard, and that's about it. So that is incredible in my opinion. I'm super happy with this edition. What's really important to note is that this sword alone has a retail price of $260. So I got this by itself was worth the price of the entirety of this this gift box, or this mystery box. So I will say this already, just based on this, is already worth the money, which is really quite something. And so we're going to look at these other things and begin to build on top of that. So there's $260. I'm going to just set that down here to the side. The next item we're going to go over is actually this katana. Took me a while to actually figure out what this katana was from. All of this is very cosmetic in my opinion. I just need to clean this off to really make this blade look nice. Everything else looks to be well constructed enough. I found out later, as you can see on the blade, there is this little icon of like a lion-ish thing. That helped me actually to identify this as the Kill Bill Bride sword. So this is the sword of the bride, I guess. I don't remember it looking exactly like this, but it is apparently a Kill Bill replica. This is made by Musashi Swords. Double checking that. This is Musashi. And the retail price of the Musashi Japanese Kill Bill sword is $90. So this is a budget katana based on a movie license. It is made of a high carbon steel. It should be roughly functional. So I'm going to clean that up, make it real nice, and all right, halfway decent edition. It's actually really hard for me to find this. What I ended up having to look at as visual cues, scouring the internet, it was the kind of hourglass shape here. And then, of course, once I discovered that this was not a maker's mark, but was instead part of the Kill Bill franchise license and part of the design, I was able to identify it, and there you have it. So, not the greatest sword ever, but certainly not a bad deal. So, $90. I was an idiot, and I called this a wakizashi. This is what's called a Tanto. I have no idea why I called it a wakizashi. I knew better. So, oh well. I made myself look like an idiot. This Tanto is made by Tenryu, so it actually came with, or sorry, not Tenryu, Ryumon. Came in this box. Nice little box to house it. Pretty basic. And the value of this Tanto is $60. And it should be functional. Again, it's budget, it's functional. As I said before, I'm actually pretty happy with this one because it kind of matches overall the custom katana I got. So I'm just going to kind of make it part of that kind of collection. Those tend to go together. You tend to have like a Tanto with a katana periodically. Again, I don't know a lot about Japanese swords, so forgive me if I sound like an idiot when I'm talking about any of this. All right, the next item is from Museum Replicas. This is actually called the Raptor sword. I actually knew that. I forgot what it was called. I knew it was called the Raptor sword because it reminded me of the dagger that I got. That is the Raven's Claw Talon-ish dagger. And there is a sword I believe they called the Talon. And this was very similar to it, and they called it the Raptor. So it is a Windlass product. It is technically functional. The weight seems awfully strange on this sword, but it's a fantasy sword, so I'll forgive it that. Windlass product. The retail price for this is $215. I don't know that I would actually spend $215 on this particular sword. I'm not big on fantasy swords, and I feel like $250 is probably a bit much. But, again, if this was the type of sword that you would want, this box would already be made a wonderful deal just by getting this one sword. Oh, and by the way, I see no visual defects or otherwise really on this sword. There is like a little bit of an issue with the leather wrapping there, but otherwise it looks to be in perfectly fine condition. So, totally worth it. And the final item, it took me a really long time to search this one down. It came in this box, and what I found out was, well, right here, it was a sticker that actually had the item number on it. KRSJM1. Even has a little sticker on it that says what's wrong with it. Loose fittings. I'll speak about the loose fittings. So, this is from Kris Cutlery. It is the Kris Cutlery folded Jian. And it is the $250 sword, normally. And after looking at it and kind of appreciating it, I kind of agree with that price mark. I'll tell you my issues with it in a moment, besides the fact that this is kind of busted. But that's a $250 sword. And here's the problems with it. This fitting, right here, shape fitting, is loose and comes off. All I have to do with this is basically re-epoxy it on. There's a little bit of a problem, if you can see just barely in the bottom here. It's kind of got an open hole in the scabbard. I don't know if that's not intentional. Kind of hard to tell. But I think epoxying all this on will kind of return that part back to normal. This middle fitting is fine. It doesn't move. Taking the sword out for a moment, as you can see, that happened when I first unboxed it. This metal fitting here, the chape piece, not a chape piece, sorry, the throat piece of the scabbard comes off. That needs to be re-epoxied. I will say I'm not a fan of how they have curved the metal in, so you got metal against metal of the sword. That will eventually damage the blade, in my opinion. But okay, so overall, scabbard is actually a very easy fix. Basic epoxy to put it all back together, and it's essentially as good as new. That'll be like a weekend project. Now, onto the sword. The sword itself seemed quite fine until I messed with the pommel piece. It's loose, but you can kind of get it back into position. I'm going to re-epoxy that as well. So that needs to be re-epoxied along with everything else. Inside of this pommel piece, essentially, you actually, when you open up, it's just hollow, and you can actually see the tang of the rest of the sword come through to a screw nut, and then it's just a basic nut screwing it all together. And holding all this together is a single screw. Now, all of the Kris Cutlery Jians apparently do that. So, it is considered battle ready. I believe they consider the nut strong enough to handle the pressures of holding everything together. And that said, this is an extremely thick blade. I mean, it's a 1/4 inch thick. And you feel the weight of that, and it's extremely rigid. But that said, this is real folded steel. The difference being it's much more subtle. You can tell it's not acid etched, and in fact, when you're kind of away from it, you can't even tell that there's any kind of Damascus pattern until you get up really close to it. So, the steel is good quality. And actually, this is probably my favorite thing that I got, even though it's got all these issues. But the reason I like it is actually the aesthetics of it. Putting everything kind of more or less back together the way it should look. I love the way this scabbard looks. I love the metal detailing. It's subtle, but it's got a lot of detail, and I really do think that they did a fine job designing it. And the sword itself, I think, also has a very interesting detailing and looks very fine. Now, it has all the issues that I noted, and I will have to do some work to fix it. But I believe I can return this sword to essentially a brand new form. The blade itself is beautiful. I see no tarnishing and no real issues with it. it has, it is sharp, and that is not been sharpened. It came sharp, so Kris Cutlery actually sharpened it. It just looks beautiful. I am so happy to have gotten this sword. It's one of those things that makes this kind of mystery box deal totally worth it. So you finally have an opportunity to get something that you didn't know you wanted, but once you get it, you're like, man, that is amazing. Now, the one problem I have with this sword is that it only fits into the scabbard one way. So you can see I just put it in randomly, and that's as far as it will go into the scabbard. So there's this gap here. However, if I, all the parts falling apart, of course, turn it around and slide it in, well, barring the fact that everything is falling off, let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. It fits. So it only goes in one way. That's problematic. Of course, I just dropped a piece of it off the edge of the table. I'll go reattach that. Again, epoxy, put it back, right back to being normal. I think I have a cat behind me. All that said, again, the prices of everything. The Moro Kris is $260. The weird medieval sword that is probably just some piece of trash that isn't really worth anything, I gave it the price of about $40. The belt is $18. The Scottish kilt dagger, as they're calling it, and they call it Damascus, but it's not really. That is $56. The Kill Bill Katana is $90. The Tanto is $60. The Windlass Fantasy Blade, the Raptor sword, is $215. And the Kris Cutlery Jian is $250. On top of all that, if you're doing all the math in your head, you can also add 4 instances of sharpening having been done. There was sharpening done on the Raptor. There was sharpening done on the Filipino weapons, the Kris. There was sharpening done on the cheap dagger and the cheap sword. So while, well, great, wonderful, who cares? There is some value in that, quote unquote, because you would normally pay for that. So I'm going to include that in the price of everything. It's $20 a piece, that's about $80. When you do the math without sharpening, everything here, if considered brand new and in perfect condition, would be $989. With sharpening, it's $1,069. Now, I paid $200 for all this. I would absolutely say that this is worth it. I got amazing stuff. I am sitting here the same day that I've opened this box. I'm literally considering going and buying another one, simply because I got a lot of really awesome stuff. I've added to my collection things I didn't even know I wanted, and I'm very happy with them. And the variety was really great because I didn't specify that I wanted medieval items. I got a variety of things. So I'm very happy with that. That kind of excites me as a collector, and it really makes me want to go back and try it again and get more. So I would say that if you are looking to just kind of spend $200 as just a gamble, as a random thing, whereas the other deals out there from other retail companies, I wouldn't say you could trust. This one from Kult of Athena has more than paid for itself. I mean, 5 times the value. They claim that they're only going to send about $500 worth of stuff. And you consider the scratch and dent aspects, and that some of these things might be discontinued or might not sell for their original retail price. I still would consider most of these to be perfectly sellable at the retail price, with very, very minor cosmetic issues, in most cases very fixable. Total value, highly recommend it if you're willing to take that gamble and you don't really care what you get. They do give the option again, put in a single word to kind of give them direction. Pirate, you might get pirate things. Fantasy, you might get more fantasy. Japanese, you'll get Japanese weapons. They'll try to customize as much as possible, but honestly, I had a lot of fun not specifying. So I might do this again and do a whole another one of these videos, just because, boy, this was a lot of fun. Hope that was valuable. Hope that gave you the information you needed. So go check it out if you have the money to spend. I'd say it's a good deal. See you next time.